The sun was setting over the small town of Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag after finishing work at the garage. He liked the quiet life here. No big city noise, no crowds, just the hum of engines and the occasional bark of a dog from down the street. Across town, Claire was packing up her things at the high school. She loved teaching biology to her students, even if some of them seemed more interested in their phones than photosynthesis. That night, as Ethan walked home with his dog Max, the usual calm felt different. The air was still, too still. Even Max seemed uneasy, stopping every few steps to sniff the ground or glance toward the woods. Ethan shook his head. "You're imagining things," he muttered to himself. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Later that evening, Claire sat by her window, sipping tea and staring at the stars. She had always found comfort in looking at the night sky, but tonight it felt strange. Bright streaks of light zipped across the horizon, moving faster than any meteor she'd ever seen. They disappeared behind the hills, leaving an odd silence in their wake. No crickets chirped. No wind rustled the trees. It was as though the world itself was holding its breath. The next morning, people started talking. Greg, the farmer who lived on the outskirts of town, reported that half his cattle were gone. Not stolen, just gone. There were no tire tracks, no signs of struggle, only claw marks on the barn doors, deep grooves that looked like they'd been made by something massive. Others shared similar stories: chickens missing, crops trampled, and strange scorch marks on the ground. Ethan heard about it when he stopped by the diner for breakfast. "Something's out there," said Pete, the cook, flipping pancakes on the griddle. "It ain't natural." Most folks laughed it off, blaming wild animals or teenagers playing pranks. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was something else entirely. Claire noticed it too. On her morning jog, she found peculiar footprints near the edge of the forest. They were long and narrow, with 3 sharp points at the front. Nothing native to Earth could have made those marks. She snapped a photo with her phone and sent it to a colleague who studied animal behavior. "Let me know what you think," she wrote, though she doubted anyone would believe her. Things took a darker turn 2 days later. Greg went missing. His truck was found abandoned near the woods, the door hanging open and keys still in the ignition. Search parties combed the area, but found nothing except more claw marks and patches of blackened earth. Fear began to spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Neighbors whispered about predators from the mountains or packs of feral dogs, but none of those explanations fit. Whatever was out there wasn't normal. One evening, as Ethan locked up the garage, he saw a shadow dart past the corner of his eye. He spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing. Just empty streets and flickering streetlights. Max growled low in his throat, hackles raised. "Easy boy," Ethan said, trying to sound calm. But his hands trembled as he reached for the bat he kept by the door. Around the same time, Claire met someone new in town. A woman named Rachel introduced herself as a scientist studying unusual weather patterns. She asked questions about the lights in the sky and the disappearances. At first, Claire thought she might be able to help, but there was something about Rachel's piercing gaze and clipped tone that set her on edge. That night, lying in bed, Claire stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the trees. Somewhere far away, a low rumble echoed, almost like thunder, but not quite. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, wishing she could ignore the nagging voice in her head. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to stop until it got what it wanted. The next day, the town of Willow Creek buzzed with unease. People gathered in small groups at the diner, the gas station, and even on street corners, sharing theories about the strange events. Some blamed wild animals, others talked about government experiments, but no one could explain the claw marks or the eerie silence that seemed to hang over the woods. Ethan spent most of his morning listening to customers swap stories while he worked on a broken truck. He tried to stay focused, but Max's constant growling made it hard to concentrate. Claire, meanwhile, decided to investigate further. She drove to the edge of the forest where she'd found the strange footprints. The ground was torn up now, as if something heavy had dragged itself through the dirt. She crouched down, inspecting the marks closely. They were deeper than before, almost like whatever made them was growing bolder or hungrier. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Rachel, the scientist she'd met the other day. "We need to talk. Meet me at the old mill." The old mill sat on the outskirts of town, abandoned for years. Claire hesitated before stepping inside, the wooden floor creaking under her weight. Rachel stood near a dusty window, her arms crossed. "You've seen the signs," Rachel said without turning around. "The lights, the disappearances, the claw marks. This isn't some animal attack. Something far worse has come here." Claire frowned. "What do you mean? What could be worse?" Rachel turned to face her. "Hunters. From another world." She spoke in a low, steady voice, as if trying to keep herself calm. "They're called the Vrykhols. They travel from planet to planet, feeding on intelligent life forms, not just for food, for sport, and they've set their sights on Earth." Claire stared at her, unsure whether to believe what she was hearing. "Aliens? You're telling me aliens are hunting us?" "I know it sounds impossible," Rachel admitted, "but I've seen their kind before. If we don't stop them, they'll wipe out this town and then move on to the rest of the planet." Ethan heard about the meeting when Claire told him later that evening. They sat together on her porch, the sun sinking below the horizon. "You really think she's telling the truth?" Ethan asked, scratching Max behind the ears. The dog lay close by, still uneasy. "I don't know," Claire admitted, "but everything she said matches what's been happening. The lights, the missing people, the claw marks, it all fits." Before they could say more, a loud crash echoed from the woods. Both of them froze. Max shot to his feet, barking furiously. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed a flashlight and stepped off the porch. Claire followed close behind, her heart racing. The noise came again, louder this time, accompanied by the sound of snapping branches. They crept toward the source of the disturbance, moving cautiously through the trees. The beam of Ethan's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but shadows at first. Then, suddenly, something moved, a flash of movement too fast for the eye to follow. Ethan swung the light around, catching a glimpse of something tall and insect-like darting between the trees. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its limbs ended in razor-sharp claws. "Did you see that?" Claire whispered, gripping Ethan's arm. He nodded, his throat dry. Whatever it wasn't human, and it wasn't alone. More shapes flitted through the woods, circling them. Max growled again, bristling with fear. Ethan shone the light in every direction, trying to keep track of the creatures, but they were too quick. One of them lunged, forcing them to stumble back. Claire tripped over a root, landing hard on the ground. Just as the creatures closed in, a bright flare lit up the forest. Rachel appeared, holding a device that looked like a cross between a flashlight and a weapon. The creatures hissed and retreated into the shadows. "Get back to town," Rachel ordered sharply. "Now." Ethan helped Claire to her feet, and they ran, not stopping until they reached the safety of her house. Max panted heavily, clearly shaken. As they caught their breath, Ethan looked at Claire. "Okay," he said finally. "I believe her." That night, the town held an emergency meeting at the community center. Dozens of people packed into the room, voices rising in panic and anger. Greg's disappearance weighed heavily on everyone's minds. When Rachel stepped forward to speak, the room fell silent. She explained what she knew about the Vrykhols, showing photos of similar attacks on other planets. Some people listened intently. Others dismissed her as crazy. But Ethan and Claire believed her. They exchanged a glance, knowing they couldn't ignore the danger anymore. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't going to leave on their own. And if the townspeople didn't act soon, they might not get another chance. The emergency meeting ended in chaos. Some people shouted questions at Rachel. demanding proof of her claims. Others argued that she was trying to scare them, or that the whole thing was a hoax. Ethan stood near the back of the room with Claire, watching the crowd grow restless. Max sat by his feet, still on edge after their encounter in the woods. The dog's ears twitched every time someone raised their voice. Rachel tried to keep her composure, but it was clear she was losing the room. "Look," she said firmly, holding up a hand to quiet the crowd. "I know this is hard to believe, but if we don't prepare now, more people will disappear, or worse." A man in the front row laughed bitterly. "Prepare for what? Aliens? You expect us to fight monsters from space with pitchforks and shotguns?" Rachel didn't flinch. "Yes," she said simply, "because they're already here, and they won't stop until we make them." Ethan stepped forward then, surprising even himself. "She's telling the truth," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We saw them tonight, out in the woods. They're real." Claire nodded, adding her voice to his. "They attacked us. If Rachel hadn't shown up, we might not have made it back." The room fell silent again, the weight of their words sinking in. A few people shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Someone muttered, "This can't be happening." But no one laughed this time. Rachel seized the moment. "We need to work together," she said. "These creatures are fast and strong, but they're not invincible. We can fight them if we're smart about it." A young woman named Mia spoke up from the corner of the room. She was barely out of high school, known around town for fixing computers and hacking into old video game consoles. "What do you need?" she asked Rachel. "Tech stuff. I can help with that." Rachel nodded. "Good. We'll need all the tools we can get. Anything that makes noise, light, or fire could give us an edge." An older man named Kyle also stepped forward. He lived alone in a cabin deep in the woods, where he hunted and trapped animals for a living. His weathered face showed no fear as he addressed the group. "If these things are predators, they'll hunt like predators. That means they'll look for easy targets. We can use that against them." With Kyle and Mia volunteering, the mood in the room began to shift. People started talking about setting up traps, patrolling the edges of town, and keeping watch at night. Ethan and Claire stayed late, helping Rachel organize supplies and plan strategies. By the time they left the community center, the first hints of dawn were lighting up the sky. That evening, the townspeople gathered again, this time with purpose. Armed with flashlights, radios, and whatever makeshift weapons they could find, they set up barricades along the main roads and lit fires to keep the darkness at bay. Ethan worked alongside Kyle, rigging tripwires and building decoys to lure the Vrykles into traps. Claire helped Mia modify old electronics into devices that emitted loud, disorienting sounds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the tension in the air grew thick. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and the forest seemed to press closer than usual. Max whined softly, pacing back and forth near Ethan's side. "It's going to be okay, boy," Ethan murmured, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. Then the power went out. The hum of electricity disappeared, plunging the town into darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came the screams from outside, somewhere beyond the flickering glow of the fires. People rushed toward the sound, weapons in hand. Ethan and Claire ran too, their hearts pounding. They found the source of the commotion near the edge of the woods. One of the Vrykles had emerged, its insect-like body towering over the panicked crowd. Its glowing eyes scanned the area, and its claws clicked together in anticipation. Behind it, more shapes moved in the shadows, closing in. Rachel appeared, shouting orders. "Stay calm. Keep your lights on it." She aimed her strange device at the creature, firing a burst of energy that sent it stumbling backward. The crowd hesitated, unsure whether to run or fight. Kyle took charge then, raising his rifle. "Don't let it circle us," he yelled. "Fire everything you've got." Gunshots rang out, followed by shouts and the crackle of flames. The Vrykle screeched, retreating into the trees, but its companions remained hidden in the darkness. Ethan glanced at Claire, both of them realizing the same thing. This was only the beginning. The attack left the town shaken but alive. The Vrykol that had emerged from the woods retreated after Kyle's shots, and Rachel's energy weapon drove it back. But no one felt safe. The creatures were still out there, watching, waiting. Ethan and Claire returned to the community center with the others, their faces pale and their hands trembling. Max limped beside them, his fur singed from the chaos. Rachel paced in front of the group, her expression grim. "They're testing us," she said. "That was just a scout. The real fight is coming." Kyle nodded, reloading his rifle. "We need better weapons, and we need to hit them before they hit us." Mia, who had been tinkering with an old radio, looked up. "What about traps? We can rig something to slow them down or hurt them." Ethan glanced at Claire. "We've got tools and scrap metal at the garage. If we work together, we can build something." Rachel agreed. "Good, use whatever you have. But remember, these things are smart. Don't underestimate them." The group split up, each person taking on a task. Ethan and Mia headed to the garage, where they started welding pieces of metal into crude flamethrowers and spears. Claire worked with some of the townspeople to gather fuel and matches, while Kyle scouted the woods for signs of the Vrykol's movements. Rachel stayed behind, using her damaged device to track any signals the creatures might be emitting. At the garage, Ethan focused on building a trap inspired by Kyle's hunting experience. "If we bait them with noise and light, we can draw them into this," he explained to Mia, holding up a metal frame lined with sharp edges. "Once they step inside, the door slams shut." Mia nodded, wiring a small speaker to the trap. "I'll program this to play sounds that mimic distress calls. It should get their attention." As they worked, Ethan couldn't shake the image of the Vrykol from earlier. The way its glowing eyes had seemed to pierce through the darkness. He wondered how many more of them were out there. "Do you think we can actually win this?" he asked Mia quietly. She didn't answer right away, tightening a bolt on the trap. "We don't have a choice," she finally said. "If we don't try, they'll kill everyone." Meanwhile, Kyle returned from the woods, his face tight with worry. "They're moving closer," he told Rachel. "I saw tracks. Big ones. They're not alone anymore." Rachel frowned, studying the data on her device. "Their hive must be nearby. If we can find it, we might be able to destroy it." Claire overheard and stepped forward. "How do we even find it? The forest is huge." "We follow the signs," Kyle said. "Broken branches, claw marks, anything unusual. They'll lead us straight to it." By nightfall, the group had prepared as much as they could. Armed with their makeshift weapons and traps, they gathered at the edge of the woods. The fires around town burned brightly, meant to keep the Vrykols distracted while the team ventured deeper into the forest. Rachel gave them one last warning. "Stick together. These things are fast, and they'll try to separate us." Ethan adjusted the strap on his backpack, feeling the weight of the supplies inside. Claire held a long metal pipe tipped with a sharpened end, her knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. Max stayed close to Ethan, his ears flat against his head. Even the dog knew what was at stake. The journey into the woods was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of crickets and owls were gone, replaced by an oppressive silence. Every step felt heavier than the last, the shadows around them growing darker and more menacing. Kyle led the way, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. "There," he whispered, pointing to a cluster of trees marked with deep gouges. "This is fresh." As they moved deeper, the air grew colder, and the ground beneath their feet felt unnaturally soft, almost like it was pulsing. Then they heard it, a low hum, vibrating through the trees. It wasn't natural, and it made their skin crawl. Maya stopped suddenly, her eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, followed by another and another. The Vrykols were watching them, circling slowly, Rachel raised her device, ready to fire, but Ethan grabbed her arm. Not yet. Wait until they're closer. The creatures moved silently, their claws clicking softly against the ground. One of them darted forward, testing their defenses. Kyle fired a shot, the sound echoing through the forest. The Vrykol hissed and retreated, but the others pressed closer. We need to move, Rachel shouted. Now. They ran, dodging roots and leaping over fallen branches. Behind them, the Vrykols gave chase, their screeches splitting the night. Ethan risked a glance over his shoulder and saw the creatures gaining ground. We can't outrun them, he yelled. Kyle skidded to a stop, turning to face the hunters. Keep going, he ordered. I'll hold them off. No, Claire shouted, reaching for him, but Ethan pulled her back. Go, Kyle barked, raising his rifle. Trust me. Reluctantly, they obeyed, leaving Kyle behind as he fired round after round into the advancing swarm. His sacrifice bought them precious seconds, leading them closer to the source of the humming, a massive structure hidden within the heart of the forest. It pulsed with alien energy, a grotesque mix of organic flesh and mechanical parts. This is it, Rachel said, her voice shaking. Their hive. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon. Then let's take it down. Part 5 The hive loomed before them, a monstrous structure that seemed alive. Its surface pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of some great beast. Strange tendrils stretched out in all directions, weaving through the trees and embedding themselves into the ground. The air around it was thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. Ethan felt his chest tighten as he stared at the alien monstrosity. It wasn't just a nest, it was a living thing. Rachel stepped closer, her device scanning the hive's surface. This is their core, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If we can destroy it, we might be able to cripple them. Mia looked up at the towering structure, her hands trembling. How do we even start? That thing looks like it could tear us apart. We focus on the center, Rachel replied. There's a weak point, a kind of control hub. If we hit it with enough force, it'll destabilize the entire hive. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. The forest behind them was eerily quiet, but he knew the Vrykols wouldn't stay away for long. We don't have much time, he said. They'll be here soon. Claire knelt beside Max, who was panting heavily, his fur matted with sweat. She stroked his head gently. We need to hurry, she said, standing up. For Kyle. For everyone. The group moved cautiously toward the base of the hive. Up close, the structure was even more unsettling. It emitted a low hum that vibrated through their bones, and small, worm-like creatures slithered across its surface, repairing any damage they found. Ethan shuddered as one of them brushed against his boot. What are those things? He asked, trying not to gag. Maintenance drones, Rachel explained. They're part of the hive's defense system. Be careful. They'll attack if provoked. As they searched for the weak point Rachel had described, the first wave of Vrykols appeared. Their glowing eyes pierced through the shadows, and their claws clicked together hungrily. Rachel raised her weapon, firing a burst of energy that sent one of the creatures stumbling back. Keep moving, she shouted. Don't let them surround us. Ethan swung his makeshift spear at a Vrykol that lunged toward him, the sharp tip grazing its armored body. The creature screeched in anger, retreating for a moment before attacking again. Claire fought alongside him, wielding her metal pipe like a club. She struck another Vrykol in the leg, causing it to stumble, but it quickly recovered, swiping at her with its claws. She barely dodged in time, falling backward onto the damp ground. Claire, Ethan yelled, rushing to help her. He drove his spear into the Vrykol's side, forcing it to retreat. Claire scrambled to her feet, her face pale but determined. Thanks, she muttered, gripping her weapon tighter. Mia worked frantically to set up one of their traps near the hive's entrance. Her hand shook as she connected wires and adjusted settings, but she didn't stop. Almost done, she called out, glancing nervously at the advancing swarm. Finally, Rachel spotted the weak point, a pulsating node embedded deep within the hive's core. There, she shouted, pointing it out. That's what we need to hit. Ethan and Claire covered her as she approached the node, firing off bursts from her energy weapon to keep the Frykles at bay. One of the creatures leaped toward her, but Mia activated the trap just in time. A net of electrified wires shot out, ensnaring the Frykle and sending it writhing to the ground. Rachel reached the node and placed a small explosive charge on its surface. "We need to get out of here," she yelled, setting the timer. Now, the group turned and ran, dodging attacks from the remaining Frykles. Behind them, the hive began to shake violently, the node glowing brighter and brighter. The humming grew louder, almost deafening, as cracks spread across the structure's surface. Small explosions erupted along the tendrils, sending chunks of organic material flying in all directions. As they reached the edge of the clearing, a massive blast rocked the forest. The hive collapsed inward, consumed by fire and smoke. The Frykles screeched in fury, retreating into the darkness. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the team's ragged breathing. Ethan sank to his knees, clutching his side. His shirt was torn and blood trickled down his arm, but he didn't care. They had done it. They had destroyed the hive. Claire dropped to the ground beside him, tears streaming down her face. "We made it," she whispered, hugging Max tightly. But Rachel didn't celebrate. She stared at the burning remains of the hive, her expression grim. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Not yet." Part 6 The explosion had left the forest eerily quiet. Smoke curled into the sky, carrying the acrid smell of burnt metal and something else, something organic. The ground beneath their feet was scorched, littered with fragments of the hive's remains. Ethan sat on a fallen log, his head in his hands. His arm throbbed where he'd been cut, but the pain wasn't what weighed on him. It was Kyle. He couldn't stop thinking about how Kyle had stayed behind, firing round after round to give them a chance. They owed him everything. Claire knelt beside Max, checking the dog for injuries. His breathing was labored, but he seemed okay otherwise. She ran her fingers through his fur, trying to steady her own nerves. "We need to get back to town," she said softly, looking at Ethan. "People will be wondering what happened." Rachel didn't move. She stood near the edge of the clearing, her eyes fixed on the smoldering wreckage. Her device hummed faintly as it scanned for any remaining signals. Finally, she turned to face the group. "The Queen isn't dead," she said bluntly. "She retreated deeper into the forest. If we don't finish this now, she'll rebuild." Mia frowned, still clutching the wires from her trap. "How do you know?" "I've seen this before," Rachel replied. "These creatures are resilient. As long as the Queen survives, the hive will regenerate. We have to find her." Ethan stood up, wincing as he put weight on his injured leg. "You want us to go after her? Now, we're barely holding it together as it is." "We don't have a choice," Rachel snapped. "If we wait, she'll send more hunters." "Do you want that? Do you want the town to burn?" No one answered. They all knew she was right, but the thought of facing the Queen made their stomachs churn. Claire spoke up after a moment. "How do we even find her? That thing could be anywhere." Rachel checked her device again. "Her signal is weak, but it's there. She's not far, maybe a mile east of here, but she'll be guarded. Expect resistance." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Exhaustion hung heavy over them, but they couldn't stop now. They gathered their weapons and supplies, bracing themselves for whatever lay ahead. Max whimpered as Ethan helped him to his feet, but the dog followed without protest. The journey through the forest felt longer this time. Every shadow seemed darker, every sound louder. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, and the trees twisted unnaturally, their branches clawing at the sky. Maya tripped over a root, cursing under her breath as she scrambled back up. "This place feels wrong," she muttered. Ethan nodded. "It's like the forest doesn't want us here." Finally, they reached a clearing larger than the one where the hive had been. In the center stood the queen, a towering monstrosity unlike anything they'd ever seen. Her body was covered in thick, chitinous armor, and her claws gleamed like polished steel. Glowing veins pulsed along her limbs, feeding her with energy. Around her, smaller vrykles circled protectively, their eyes locked on the intruders. Rachel raised her weapon, aiming at the queen. "Stay close," she warned. "Don't let them flank us." The first wave of vrykles charged, their movements lightning fast. Ethan swung his spear wildly, driving one of them back. Claire fought beside him, her pipe striking true against another creature's leg. Maya activated one of her traps, sending a burst of electricity through two vrykles that lunged at her, but for every one they felled, two more took its place. Rachel fired her energy weapon repeatedly, each shot hitting the queen's armored hide. The creature roared in anger, shaking the ground beneath their feet. One of her claws slashed downward, narrowly missing Ethan as he dove out of the way. Max barked furiously, biting at the legs of a smaller vrykle. "Keep going," Rachel shouted, reloading her weapon. "We're wearing her down." But the queen wasn't alone. More vrykles emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. Just as it seemed hopeless, Kyle appeared at the edge of the clearing. Bloodied and battered, he held his rifle steady, firing shot after shot into the swarm. "Go," he yelled. "I'll hold them off." "No," Claire screamed, reaching for him, but Rachel grabbed her arm. "We have to finish this," Rachel said firmly. "For everyone." Tears streamed down Claire's face as they pressed forward, leaving Kyle behind. The queen reared back, preparing to strike. Ethan hurled a makeshift grenade at her chest, the explosion sending her stumbling backward. Rachel seized the moment, firing a concentrated blast at the queen's exposed underside. The creature screeched, collapsing to the ground. But the victory came at a cost. As the remaining vrykles scattered, Ethan looked back toward Kyle. He was gone, lost to the swarm. Max whimpered softly, sensing the loss. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rachel broke the silence. "We did it," she said quietly. "But we're not done yet." Part 7 The forest was silent now, the battle over but the cost heavy. Ethan stared at the spot where Kyle had made his final stand, his chest tight with grief. Max sat by his side, his head resting on Ethan's knee. The dog's eyes were dull, as if he too felt the weight of what they'd lost. Claire walked over, her face pale and streaked with tears. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They all understood. Kyle had given everything to protect them. Rachel knelt beside the fallen queen, inspecting its massive body. The creature lay motionless, its glowing veins dimmed and lifeless. "She's dead," Rachel said, her voice flat. "But we're not safe yet. The rest of them will come back for revenge." Ethan clenched his fists. "How many more are there?" "Enough," Rachel replied. "They won't stop until we force them to." Mia, who had been checking her traps, looked up. "What do we do now? We can't just keep fighting them one by one." Rachel stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "We turn their own tactics against them. They're hunters, but they're also predators. Predators follow patterns. If we create a big enough distraction, we can lure them into a trap." Claire frowned. "A distraction? What kind of distraction?" Rachel glanced at the burning remains of the hive in the distance. "Fire, noise, chaos. Anything that makes them think they found easy prey. We'll rig it so they walk right into an ambush." The group returned to town, moving quickly despite their injuries. The streets were eerily quiet, most people huddled indoors or keeping watch near the barricades. When they arrived at the community center, Rachel called everyone together. "We have a plan," she said, addressing the crowd. "But we need your help." Ethan stepped forward. We're going to set up a fake attack site outside of town. It'll draw the Vrykles away from here and give us a chance to hit them hard." Kyle's sacrifice wasn't mentioned, but it hung in the air like a shadow. People nodded, some wiping away tears. A man named Ben volunteered to lead a team to gather fuel and scrap metal. Others offered to help build decoys or patrol the perimeter. Even those too scared to fight pitched in, preparing food and first aid kits. By nightfall, the town was ready. Fires burned brightly along the main roads, designed to look like defenses, but the real work happened outside of town. Using old farming equipment and spare parts, Ethan, Mia, and a few others constructed a network of traps around a clearing. Loudspeakers played recorded sounds of distress calls, mimicking human voices. Claire worked with Rachel to set up EMP devices, hoping to disrupt the Vrykles' senses. As they finished, Ethan paused, looking out at the dark woods. "Do you think this will work?" he asked Rachel quietly. "It has to," she replied. "If it doesn't, Willow Creek is done for." Back in town, the remaining townspeople prepared for the worst. Weapons were distributed, and people took positions behind the barricades. Children and the elderly were moved to the school basement, where supplies were stockpiled. Max stayed close to Ethan, his ears twitching at every sound. Hours passed in tense silence. Then, just after midnight, the ground began to tremble. From the edge of the forest came a low hum, growing louder with each passing second. The Vrykles emerged, dozens of them, their glowing eyes scanning the area. They moved cautiously at first, drawn by the noise and light of the decoy site. "They're taking the bait," Mia whispered, watching through binoculars from a hidden position. "Not all of them," Rachel said grimly, pointing toward the town. A smaller group of Vrykles split off, heading straight for the barricades. "We'll handle them," Claire said firmly. "You focus on the trap." Ethan hesitated, torn between staying with Claire and helping Rachel. Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go. We'll be fine." With a heavy heart, Ethan followed Rachel and Mia to the decoy site. As the Vrykles entered the clearing, Rachel activated the EMP devices. The creatures froze, disoriented, their movements sluggish. Ethan and Mia sprang into action, triggering the traps. Explosions rocked the clearing, sending flames and debris flying. The Vrykles screeched in fury, retreating into the shadows. Meanwhile, back in town, Claire led the defense against the smaller group. Gunshots rang out as townspeople fought fiercely to protect their homes. Max barked wildly, biting at the legs of any Vrykle that got too close. For a moment, it seemed like the creatures might break through, but reinforcements arrived, dragging them back. By dawn, the fighting stopped. The surviving Vrykles fled into the forest, their numbers greatly reduced. Exhausted and battered, the townspeople gathered in the square. Rachel approached Ethan and Claire, her expression unreadable. "It's not over," she said, "but we've bought ourselves time." Ethan looked at Claire, then at Max. "What happens now?" Rachel sighed. "Now we prepare for the next attack. Because they'll be back." Part 8 The days that followed were a blur of rebuilding and preparation. The town of Willow Creek was scared but alive, its people forever changed by the battle against the Vrykles. Ethan worked tirelessly at the garage, repairing vehicles and reinforcing barricades. Claire spent her mornings teaching again, though her students noticed she spoke more about survival and resilience than biology. Max stayed by their side, his energy slowly returning as the wounds of war began to heal. Rachel remained in town, helping them fortify their defenses. She taught them how to use the EMP devices and showed them how to build better traps. "They'll come back," she reminded them often. "And when they do, we need to be ready." Mia became a key figure in the town's efforts. Her knack for technology proved invaluable as she modified old equipment into tools that could detect the Vrykles' movements. She also worked with Rachel to improve the decoys, making them more convincing. "If we can fool them once, We can do it again, Maya said confidently, though her hands still trembled when she thought about the creatures. The townspeople came together like never before. Neighbors who had barely spoken now shared meals and worked side by side. Even those who had doubted Rachel's warnings pitched in, driven by gratitude and fear. They knew they owed their lives to Kyle and others who had sacrificed everything. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan and Claire stood on her porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. Max lay at their feet, his tail thumping softly against the wood. "Do you think we'll ever feel safe again?" Claire asked quietly. Ethan shook his head. "Maybe not, but we've got each other. That's something." Rachel walked up then, carrying her damaged device. "I need to leave soon," she said. "There are other places where the Vrykhols might strike. I have to warn them." Claire frowned. "You're leaving? After everything?" Rachel nodded. "I don't want to. But this isn't just about Willow Creek anymore. If I don't stop them elsewhere, they'll keep coming back here." Ethan stepped forward. "We'll go with you." "No," Rachel said firmly. "You've done enough. This town needs you. Protect it." Before anyone could argue, a loud hum filled the air. The ground trembled, and bright streaks of light shot across the sky. The same lights that had appeared weeks ago. But this time, they weren't alone. A massive spaceship descended from the clouds, hovering above the forest. Its surface gleamed with alien markings, and a beam of light shot down, illuminating the clearing where the hive had been. Rachel smiled faintly. "That's my ride." "What is it?" Claire asked, shielding her eyes from the glare. "My team," Rachel replied. "They tracked me here. Looks like I'm not the only one hunting the Vrykhols." As the ship landed, figures emerged, tall, armored beings with glowing visors. They moved with precision, scanning the area and securing the perimeter. One of them approached Rachel, speaking in a language no one understood. She nodded and turned back to Ethan and Claire. "This isn't over for me, but for you, it might be." Ethan extended his hand. "Thank you. For everything." Rachel shook it firmly. "Take care of each other, and don't let your guard down." With that, she joined the others, boarding the ship. Moments later, it ascended into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. The town watched in silence, unsure whether to feel relief or dread. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. The scars of battle remained, both on the land and in the hearts of the people. Ethan and Claire grew closer, finding strength in each other. Max grew stronger too, his playful bark echoing through the streets once more. But the memory of the Vrykhols lingered, a reminder of how fragile their world truly was. At night, Ethan would sit on the porch, staring at the stars. He wondered if Rachel was out there somewhere, still fighting. He hoped she was winning. For now, Willow Creek was safe, and that was enough.